For more than 4 decades, the Voyager 2 probe has been drifting through the dark expanses of interstellar space. A lone messenger from Earth, driven by curiosity and a thirst for knowledge. Launched in 1977, it carried the hopes, dreams, and questions of all humanity aboard a spacecraft the size of a small car. It was never designed to last this long, yet against all odds, it continued to send faint signals back to Earth from a distance that is impossible to comprehend. These transmissions, weakened by the vastness of space, were nothing more than whispers, radio pulses carried away by cosmic winds. But recently, something changed. In the latest data packet from Voyager 2, engineers from NASA's Deep Space Network noticed something strange. They detected a pattern that was unlike routine telemetry or predictable system behavior. When they decoded the data, it wasn't another status report or scientific update on magnetic fields or plasma density. It was a message, and it didn't bode well. Before you start, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for new updates. Voyager 2 had been sending strange signals for several months, but engineers initially dismissed them as aging equipment or solar interference. The probe is powered by a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, which weakens over time, and many of its components could have failed over time. However, a small team at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory was not satisfied with this explanation. They noticed that despite the distortions, the signal contained repeating structures, mathematical sequences, and bursts of data that did not match Voyager's standard transmission protocol. Something had been introduced into the telemetry, intentionally, or at least it seemed that way. After weeks of painstaking work, comparing old code and analyzing archived data streams, the team was able to separate out the noise. What remained was a clear, structured pattern, a digital signature that no one had expected. The binary sequence was converted into a readable data set, but the content was unexpected. It seemed that the probe had either become self-aware or had been reprogrammed, perhaps from afar. The message it carried was not human in origin, at least not in the form we understand it. It spoke of spatial anomalies, changes in physical constants, and something resembling a disruption, or even a rupture, somewhere far beyond the heliopause. The essence of the message was alien, not only in language, but also in logic. It described areas of space-time whose behavior deviated from the familiar laws, as if the fundamental rules of reality were beginning to break down or change. These were not theoretical musings, but analysis backed up by data, readings from the Voyager instruments themselves, filtered through someone's or some entity's external interpretation of the signal. Even more disturbing was the presence of a temporal component. There were mentions of events occurring not only in space, but also in time, asynchronously, simultaneously, and contrary to normal causality. Scientists gradually began to realize that Voyager 2 could have passed through an area of space acting as a lens, not just refracting electromagnetic waves, but reality itself. The disruption was not destructive, but it was widespread and stretched across a broad zone that Voyager had crossed several years earlier. The most frightening thing was not the disruption itself, but what followed it. The message contained data on energy fluctuations, field inversions, and low-frequency pulses, which, when plotted on a space coordinate system, pointed to a convergence point, something pulling, exerting influence over a distance of parsecs. It was not a warning in the usual sense. It was not aggressive or emotional. It was more like a report, cold, clinical, accurate, but at the same time, ominous. If the data was correct, the fabric of our universe was beginning to experience disturbances, accelerating like a tide and moving inward, toward the center, toward us. NASA did not initially publicize these findings, not because of a conspiracy, but because the scientists themselves struggled to understand the implications. The possibilities were mind-blowing. Had Voyager 2 been intercepted by artificial intelligence drifting in interstellar space? Or had it been taken over by an extraterrestrial force? Or had it become the messenger of an inevitable cosmic event, an interstellar tectonic shift never before observed? Each of these possibilities raised more questions than answers. Moreover, the message contained coordinates, or at least something resembling them. It also contained values similar to thresholds, limits, or boundaries. Perhaps they indicated zones of influence, safe ranges, or triggers for events that had not yet been recorded. There was a progression in the logic of the message, like a countdown, though not in units of time known to us. The rhythm was like a galactic metronome tied to gravitational waves. The change in the Voyager signal's signature was particularly disturbing. The previous telemetry had been stable and predictable, but the new transmission had a different modulation, an unfamiliar tempo. Radio telescopes detected not only changes in frequency, but also anomalies in the time delay, as if someone were folding the signal back on itself before it reached Earth. Such distortions are not accidental. They require deliberate interference with physical forces. In other words, something or someone was helping the probe transmit this message. Scientists began to compare the anomaly with known galactic objects. It was not related to black holes, quasars, dark matter clusters, or nebulae. On the contrary, it was located in an area previously considered empty. Now this empty space pulsed with radiation and energy bursts, and Voyager passed through it. Changes in transmission began immediately after this contact. From that moment on, everything became different. The consequences went beyond astronomy. If there are regions of space where physics is broken, what else could lie beyond these boundaries? Perhaps physics itself is not universal, but local? Could there be zones where time flows differently, where matter is structured in forms unknown to us? And if there are entities there, conscious or not? What if the Voyager signal is just an echo, a touch of something, like a stone causing ripples in an invisible ocean? As the decryption progressed, linguists, mathematicians, and cryptographers joined the effort. Some began to argue that the message was not just information, but interaction. The responses to pings from Earth varied depending on the coded questions. This implied perception and interpretation, and therefore intelligence. This undermined the very idea of Voyager. It was never intended for two-way communication outside the solar system, but now it was behaving like a conduit, like a medium. Those who worked with the data experienced cognitive dissonance, not because the message was incomprehensible, but because it was too logical. It followed rules, not ours, but still meaningful. There was mathematical elegance in its structure: fractals, prime numbers, symmetry. Logic inherent in natural systems, but on a scale and in dimensions beyond our perception. Researchers began to suspect that perhaps the message wasn't sent to us, but through us, as if Earth were simply a relay station in a vast network. The message also recorded changes in background cosmic radiation, microwave shifts that had not been noticed before, but were picked up by Voyager, which was free from solar interference. These shifts indicated a local drop in temperature, areas where entropy was not increasing, but, on the contrary, order was spontaneously emerging. This contradicts the laws of thermodynamics, but that is exactly what the data showed. Now the message was no longer a scientific rarity. It had become an existential question. Were we witnessing the birth of new laws of physics, or the destruction of old ones? An alarming hypothesis emerged. The universe could be undergoing a phase transition, like water turning into ice, only on a cosmic scale. And Voyager 2, accidentally or intentionally, had recorded the first tremors of this change. The reaction at NASA and in the scientific community was divided. Some demanded complete transparency and global cooperation. Others called for caution. If the data was indeed so significant, premature disclosure could cause panic or lead to abuse. For now, the message remains within a small circle of experts, being deciphered line by line, day by day. And then, the final part of the transmission, a sudden powerful pulse, more intense than all the previous ones. It seemed like a farewell message, the final chord before silence. It contained a harmonic resonance that did not match any known frequency in the universe. It was as if Voyager had completed its mission and was passing the baton, or sending a signal to be received by someone else. After that, everything returned to normal telemetry. Weak signals, no distortions. Just an old probe, once again battling the void. But everything had changed, because at some point, something incomprehensible had spoken through it. It gave us a glimpse into a universe that is not only moving, but changing at its very core. No one could say for sure whether it was a warning, a discovery, or an invitation. But one thing was clear. Voyager 2 had touched something huge. Something that sees the universe not through light and distance, but through structure and transformation. It showed us that space is not silent. It sounds, pulsates, and stretches. And we have only just begun to hear its song. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. And in the comments, tell us what you think about the decoded message from Voyager 2. Your opinion is important to us. See you next time.